Good morning, everyone, and welcome into the MarketSauce Method Masterclass follow-up call number one here on August 8th, 2024. I am Darby Rollins, joined today by an amazing group of people, including Shelly, Roger, Marty, Marike, let's see who else, Tyrese. Great to see you all here, and Yolanda. Happy Thursday, everyone.
Happy Thursday.
Good to see everybody here on today's call. The agenda for today's call is to first and foremost start off with any wins that anyone has coming off of the masterclass and workshop last week, insights or anything specific that you took away and have been putting into action. We also want to make sure that we're addressing on this call any particular roadblocks or areas that you'd like us to maybe mastermind and hot seat during the call if you're stuck anywhere, particularly putting things into action. And then we'll also be discussing a few things related to the certification and just general feedback as we continue to move forward. So we'll open the floor first and foremost. Are there any wins coming off of last week's masterclass that anyone would like to share? Hi,
I'll
Tyrese.
go first. I was super impressed by the fact that I went through the whole thing, and I thought because we'd already done the Market Sauce 9000, there wasn't more to discover. But with this, it really dove in deeper. I managed to get 78 pages out of the entire prompt, which
78
then
pages.
78.
Okay,
What?
Where I ran through all the prompts and then I just copied and pasted it into a Google document to see
got it.
where all the answers and everything went. And so then that's how and as I went through it, I changed it to see if I changed it for a course, if I changed it for another service, how it would differ. And I'm really impressed by that. It's giving lots of ideas, new ideas.
Cool. That's great to hear. Thank you for sharing.
Mhm.
Marike, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, I had a win. It was with a new client, a new lead, and I used all the input of the last time MarketSauce document. So I started with questioning my customer. I put a questionnaire to them. I got the answers. These answers I put into the persona development. Then there became a persona. It was a team persona, and they asked us to facilitate them in helping to set up an innovation hub in their organization and facilitate various innovation projects. So when I had the persona clear based on their input, I mapped out our service offerings that are related to their question. And then I became aware that based on the prompting and the structure AI gave to the service offerings, it became very crystal clear what the key benefits were for them, specific for them as persona, of all those service offerings. So then I had the intake, the personal intake. It was a Zoom meeting. And my target was to make it the best call ever because I had the best information ever. And after that, during the call, they became so enthusiastic. And there's the win. They were asking us for offer. So it really works.
All right. So to clarify, that by the end of that call, they were asking you what the offer was, and are you working with them as a client now in a different regard?
Yeah, no, they ask us now for a price,
Okay.
and during the coming month they will go to their decision maker, and I gave him information what they could talk about to their decision making based on your prompts, Darby. We discovered out. And I really know that we are going to win this one.
It's great to hear.
Yeah. So I think it is amazing. It works. But my lesson here is first ask them questions, get their answers, because then you have real, you already have some real data from your customers. Add that to ChatGPT in my case, and then develop the persona and map your service offerings. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. See your hand raised.
Yeah, I've been doing market research on this market, older men, kind of the later stages of our careers. And the data I got out of MarketSauce, with an intentional dinner we called it the other night, we had 8 guys come together. Most of us didn't know each other. It was friends of friends of friends. And we went around the room introducing ourselves and telling us kind of where we are. Everything they said was in the reports that I created. Like what they want out of life at this stage of life and what their pain points were. It was just amazing.
I love it. And so how did you generate the reports based on any user interviews in the first place, or was those more going directly to ChatGPT and then matching that up with the real world interactions that you were having?
I started with this kind of how I'm feeling because I'm one of my best customers. And then I talking to some friends, like what they wanted. But then we got this group together just to see, is this just a few of us or is it everybody? So it's just really powerful to see how spot on it was.
It's great. It kind of builds on the part of the conversation from last week about the focus groups with AI and then the real world human focus groups that you put together and matching up, you know, what's true and what's not. It's great to hear that it's in line with your own experiences and that other people are resonating with that. I think that's a good sign.
Yeah, it's great.
Thank you for sharing. Anyone else have any wins coming off of last week from the workshop in implementing MarketSauce?
Yeah.
Artie, hey.
Yeah. I don't, well, so it was a win for me, but not like to bring in clients, right? So through the conversation, Shelley had suggested that I focus in on one market. And typically I haven't done that, right? I've basically gone in and just coached whatever, and I just learned the market as I go, right? And but I did notice that, so I decided to pick healthcare because I thought I know a little bit about that. So I went in and started talking about a small, medium-sized, healthcare organization. And so what that did was it helped me focus, but then I realized I don't really understand how they work. So I called a friend of mine who's a surgeon, and he got all excited about this, right? So we're gonna go back and forth in the document, but the fact that he got excited about it told me a lot, right? And then it also pointed out as we talked through the document that I really, while I had like my ideas of it, his were a little bit more grounded in, well, this is the reality of things, and they would never do that, but this they would do. And the things that he was talking about seemed ridiculous, like so easy that I would have discounted them. And he's like something as simple as, you know how after you have surgery, they give you a sheet of paper that tells you what the care you're supposed to do. He said, nobody reads that. You give it to them, nobody reads it, they throw it out. He said, but we're required by regulations to give that to them. And he said, so I have to type something up, it gets passed off to somebody and so that's something that would be perfect for Gen AI to do, to just generate it and send them an email. All right. And that would cover them. And he said, you'd be amazed at how much time that would save us. And then we have actual proof that we sent it. And so things like that got better. And so that helped. And then I started thinking, okay, I get that, but can you, or does it make sense? Could you just shift that and think about it from a role-based standpoint in an organization, right? So I deal with a lot of product managers, for example. It doesn't really matter who they work for, if it's healthcare or if it's finance. There are certain things that they do to get their work done, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that, well, I know that I can teach them how to create, my service is basically teaching them, not like what you're doing here, but teaching them how to use ChatGPT to kind of streamline their processes. So I didn't do that, but I was going to start to investigate that next. But all that came from me having to focus on one thing, which helped a ton. The information I get out was so much better.
Congratulations, Marty.
That was it. That, like I said, it didn't close any clients, but it made me feel good.
Yet. Operative word.
Thank you, Marty. Anyone else wins from the week? No matter how small or big, we want to hear them. Celebrate together.
Darby,
on.
I was on the thing last week, and I only had a day because I was away for a few days. But I had a meeting with a client. He's a friend, and they're lawyers who do like high-end tax planning here in Canada, and they use life insurance strategies. So I gave some of the basic stuff, and it came out with some pretty good information. It gave a lot of information. The client showed me where it was right, where it was wrong. And then he gave me a document. It's a paper that he wrote. So I think I'm going to upload that and see if I think MarketSauce can read that. I'm not sure. Or summarize that into into the avatar questions. But it did give some really, it was a really good start. So they were impressed, to say the least. And we're throwing in life insurance along with actuarial science, all this boring, drab stuff, which is the goal of when they speak with their clients, because it's boring, drab stuff. But it's when it's presented properly, it provides extreme value to them. So, which is in Canada, instead of paying 60% tax, they can pay 15% tax. So the end goal is huge. We just have to show them how to do it.
That's great. Yeah, and if you have if you're using just the GPT version of MarketSauce, the Gamechanger, or otherwise, just uploading a file summary, at the very least, a client discovery call interview is great for priming it with that extra information.
Yeah, I've actually got a couple of those. I've got a call and a paper that you wrote to a group, so I'm going to try that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Anyone else, Roger, anything on your end from the week?
I guess a small win. I just got through the whole MarketSauce GPT. So I've got questions about it, but that's the first time I went through all the prompts and kind of looked at everything based upon last week's. So I have some functional questions about it when we get to that point. So.
Cool. Yeah, we'll definitely cover that in questions on this call. I'm going to just one last round. Larray, great to see you. Dr. Larray, hope you're doing well. We're just doing some wins as we kick off the call this week. Great to see you, Kelly. Any wins from your world, Kelly, this week?
Just starting to see the dynamics of the content in the document. Like I really, there's one side of me that just wants to be like, I'm just going to start using it. But I've really started to like read through it multiple times, which is something that I haven't done in the past. And I'm really just starting to see the like limitless possibilities of when I run a component of the prompt through, and then I like combine a couple components from the prompt and the results that they give, but how they change, when you change the dynamics. And so I've just really been like, I think I've committed to just like, we have this amazing document. Like, how do we really utilize it to its full extent? I know that's been part of our conversations in the past with some of the other blueprints and things, is like, we have these great documents. Are we really using them to the fullest potential? And so that's what I've really just been taking time over the last week to kind of explore is, I think on the surface level, we all see what we have, but I'm really trying to take that deeper perspective of like, what do we really have and how does this all really integrate into like our business efforts and our marketing and things like that. So I'm like knee deep in content. And I guess that's a win, right? Like, I think that is a win, because I think in a world where there's a lot of people generating prompts, a lot of people doing things in different ways, a lot of us who've run very lengthy prompts before, to just commit some time to saying like, don't just run with the content, actually be strategic and logical about how you can use this in the different ways that you can use it. For a lot of people that are using it in business and potentially like going to be using it with their own clients, I think there's a lot of possibilities that we just aren't seeing from the surface. And I'm really, really spending time to like dive in. So I hope in future calls, I'll have some maybe different perspectives or different approaches to things that I've seen from the content.
Great. Yeah, no, it's definitely the time to you know, make the right move of just staying still, so to speak, and absorbing the information and being more strategic in the planning stage so that when you are ready to go full speed, you're going in that right direction and where it's applicable. So
Yeah, and we all have our own workflows, right? Like something too that I'm recognizing is, and I think this is true with AI, one person's workflow doesn't work for everybody, right? Like if we're actually smarter and more innovative if we don't take a cookie cutter approach and say like person A did this, so I'm just going to try to duplicate it. So I think part of the magic and part of the innovation of being like a thought leader and a pioneer where this is concerned is to actually recognize we all have the same potential information in this one piece. But what is going to work with my workflow in my business is going to look completely different to how Shelly is going to approach it with her clients and how she can use it within her business. And I think we owe ourselves the time to just say like, well, how does this work in my business? Even though Darby is using it this way, Shelly's using it this way, right? Marika's using it this way, is like really owning it and finding our own flow as to what our business needs and how we can use it internally.
Yeah, that's great. I see a Lorraine echoing the you know, what you're saying about using it to its fullest potential. And I think that's a great point that you highlight with how everyone here, even in sharing our wins, is using it in a slightly different fashion. It's part of the, I think, like the power in what generative AI gives us, especially as entrepreneurs, and you know, like where can we apply this in our own businesses? But it's also kind of it brings more questions in a lot of cases. Well, now I got the answer to one thing. Now I have to solve the next 10 steps. And I think at least one of my wins from the week, my big win is I've worked with just working on a project right now with a client that the focus for the application for MarketSauce is on client discovery, which is something that I've just noticed as a trend in recent applications. And I'm sure that you guys can understand where I'm coming from in reviewing any sort of client call, any sort of mastermind transcript, any sort of interview that you might have inside of your own process, whether it's client on the podcasting side and breaking down content on the front end of things versus you're onboarding a client and you're creating a solution for them that's very particular. This project, in a sense of not wanting to overwhelm the client, we were very direct in terms of like, what are we actually going to display as a deliverable for the buyer's brief? Because when I'm looking through this process, and like, it's great that you can generate 50, 70 pages of content, but if you're working with a client that's like, no, I just want this information right now, it might take generating that 60 something pages of content to figure out these are the insights and this is the outputs that I actually want to include that's going to provide the most value. In this case, it is in the context of, you know, targeting different investor personas that you want to be essentially raising money for a project that you're going to be working on. Classic case of a brand having tons of information and having a great product and a great service, but all the brand information is very much this is me, this is my brand, this is what we do, here's all the cool things that we do. And so the challenge here, and where I think is a good application of MarketSauce for anyone's business when you're working with a client, is if a client's already delivering great products or results, they need to be able to extract that information from whatever onboarding process is to getting them to the next stage of their execution in the process. And here, they're providing insights on different perspectives for how investors are going to view their company. So the question is like, okay, well, how fast can we decrease the time to the different personas to getting value from this brand? And you see that in the strategic creator brief when you say, here's the audiences, here's the features, here's the benefits. But how can we add a step further of more value to that? In this case, is we're taking all of their context and information, we're using that section of the blueprint in some way, shape, or form, creating some slight modifications on the prompts, and then actually just having it reference the documents to pull citations like, hey, in slide 24, the brand references this is where the brand can back up what it's saying to the value that it provides to this customer here on this front. And so like the challenge for me and why this is a win is because it's forcing kind of like, let's take this 50-page document and how do we get that down to like really like 10 to 15 pages is like super direct, clear. This is what the application is at this point. And then that will open up into additional ways that we can collaborate on future projects. But my big takeaway from this is I think every one of us who's working with clients has discovery calls in some way, shape, or form, where you equate the amount of time that you or somebody else is applying to these discovery calls, 4 hours a week, 40 hours a month, whatever it is. We can compress that a lot with some variation of creating even just blueprints, but you know, especially in terms of adding a value to show what you can bring to the table as someone that can also provide additional solutions with AI based on what their specific needs are. And the blueprint will help you with coming up with those ideas as you build it out. So some wins from my side, as well as everyone else here on the call today. So thank you all for coming on and sharing. We didn't hear from everyone, I don't think. So Shelly, if you had anything on your end that was a win, or Lorraine, if you did, or Yolanda, would love to hear from y'all before we kind of cover a bit about the certifications, then dig into any questions.
I mean, the only thing that I can contribute right now is, I think we've mentioned it, but aside from my standard offerings, I'm really going narrow deep on baby boomer women. And I guess what I want to share is, once you find that target market and you can go narrow deep, it's almost like a convergence of energy and ideas that evolve around it. Starting a Boomers in Business podcast, doing some great work with Darby. And I really think once you find your focus, you can just go narrow deep and start to build your content, your partners. And because we all know we can't be everything to everybody, but narrow deep with these briefs is huge. It's like giving birth to an idea and then knowing what to do with it.
Oh, that's great, Shelley. And that's, you know, again, like being able to go and focus on that narrow and then going super deep on any sort of content very fast, right? Also, it's like, remember what's the why behind it, and like what's the goal that we're looking to solve here and accomplish in the first place. And then focusing and going deep on that. Like, you've been working with the baby boomers, you've committed to that for several weeks now. I'm sure you've been thinking about the idea for longer, but as you go down and further an idea, you can see how I feel like the compound and the effort starts to build on each other. And then as you start getting that feedback from getting, you know, additional clients and different conversations, that helps kind of refine the focus.
It's just so beneficial to know your psychographics. What do they want, and how does what you offer match their needs and wants? I think when you get real clarity about that, you know, you have a road to drive down. You just really have a direction. You know, I'm finding National Association for Baby Boomer Women. Like, who knew? I'm finding so many things out there that are just really, and completed a speaker page, an updated speaker page. So now I can start to apply directly for podcast guesting. Like, it just gives you, you know, my analogy when I talk to my clients is, I just bought a brand new BMW. I didn't, but imagine if you bought a brand new car and you had 5 roads to go down. You only have one car. We have to pick a road. And when you go down that road, you know, then you can take it on the road. You can say, you know what, maybe I'll take a right and I'll focus on baby boomer men, or maybe I'll take a left. The road will lead you other places. So you can't be afraid to say yes to one for fear of saying no to others. But choosing and having the business development and the brief behind it, it's like finding your car and finding your road. That's what it feels like to me.
One thing I did, there was like 6 phrases that stood out. People were afraid, the men version of what you're doing, Shelley. There were 6 phrases. So I'm running Facebook ads to test which fear is most. And there's one, the men fear isolation. He's getting 10 times more clicks than the other ones. I know what they want right now.
Correct. Awesome.
If you're open to it, Ted, I'm curious if you should just like, what's your approach for getting these ads out and testing them? Are you measuring on like specific metrics? Are you putting like a $5 or $10 a day budget behind them, or how much data are you getting back from these ads so far?
Yeah, I spent $60 in the last 3 days. That's like $20 a day. And it's converting like crazy. I got about 18 leads out of $50 or $60.
Where was that, Ted?
I'm just running Facebook ads with these phrases, basically men who recently retired men who fear isolation, do this or something. There's different ways. I did a class with Chris Rocheleau. So he has a format of how to put the questions out there. And then they're downloading this report, the 4 stages of retirement. Basically, there's honeymoon, and then they get into the, now what do I do? So they can get really clear on what they want, their language, and then hearing it from these men the other night, it's like, wow. Like you said, Shelley, pick a road and go down it. We know
Awesome.
which road to go to.
Well, we can always go down another one, but we got to get where we're going first.
Right.
Exactly. I love the putting just minimal ad spend behind it and letting the other people, online giving you the data that's going to inform kind of where you should be spending your focus and what's the big pain point that we want to be kind of narrowing in on. That's great, Ted. Thank you so much for sharing.
And I find that if you ask a man a question about what you fear, they'll say one thing, but if they see an ad with a phrase that really bothers them, they'll click on that ad.
Wow.
And download it. So it's great intelligence. So
absolutely. So we'll jump in here to some questions, or if anyone's feeling any specific roadblocks or hurdles. Just quickly before we transition to that part, we're building out just a simple certification process that will be ready in a few weeks, before the end of the month, based on kind of the programs that we're looking to model in terms of just, asking some questions, making sure that there's just a quick qualification for getting the certification. Take about 30 minutes of time, probably anywhere between like 30 to 50 questions that are just related to the MarketSauce method, the workflows that we've covered inside of the masterclass, and then some additional resources and things that will go on to supporting that certification for those of you that are interested in being part of that, as it was an aspect of this class and this program. And with that in mind, the other thing that we are looking at doing to maintain this class and the additional calls that we're going to be having, because I, for one, and I know that others in this group right now feel the same way, that these ongoing calls are very helpful for keeping support and answering questions, and not only celebrating wins, but also like maybe what are the next steps based on where I'm at in this situation for helping you getting those results. So we're looking at opening up a separate membership than the Gen AI University community at a lower monthly price point for that will start after this month is on, for just like ongoing calls. And like we're looking at like 2 calls a month to start with, the community to be open for interaction, engagement, asking questions in between those calls, and then additional updates to the different resources that we're providing here. So just in case you guys see some additional information about that, that's the context behind it for the continuing of these types of calls and containers. And then of course, ongoing master classes that will produce based on where everybody's at in terms of the developments of AI and things of that nature. So just stay tuned for more info on that front. Right now, for the remainder of this call, I want to keep the floor open for anyone that has any burning questions, or anything particular that you want to address on this call related to what we covered in the masterclass and workshop, and putting those outputs that we're creating into action. I know, Roger, you had something, and so maybe we'll kick things off with you.
Sure. Yeah, you just made me think before I get into my questions, when we talked about discovery. So I did a call this week with a potential client that reached out to me through another channel, but I really didn't know a lot about his business. And you got me thinking here with the discovery path that there could be a prompt you could develop to get the demographics, psychographics, as much information about a business that you don't know about that would be valuable during the discovery call. In other words, it might prompt questions for you to ask and verify, and show that you are already kind of up to a certain level with knowledge, even though you aren't, right? But you're getting to know the client, and that would develop a series of questions and verifications to understand it. And then after the call, even before you maybe provide a proposal, you could provide a kind of confirmation. Hey, based upon our last conversation, here's what I understand your company and needs and wants to be. Is this correct? You know, before I go forward with our proposal, is this you? You know, and verify that. I could see a whole pathway that could be really valuable to use during discovery and strategy kind of calls. So anyway, that just popped into my head while we were talking. But when I went through the MarketSauce Gamechanger, there are user prompts, and then there are outlines, you know, afterwards, right?
Mm-hmm.
So at the beginning, we've got to basically provide the user prompts. In other words, we've got to give it the information about the profile of the, you know, the ICP and so forth. We have to give it some brand stuff. You know, there's certain basics that we have to provide the prompt to get something out of it, right? That's valuable. And then at a certain point, it starts saying, well, here's some user prompts. But if you don't provide those prompts, what actually happens in the background? Let's say I go, okay, well, I don't really have any input on this point. I don't know this. I maybe haven't met with this client yet, or potential client. What does the GPT do? Does it seems like it manufactures information based upon what it does know up to that point. Is that what's happening behind the scenes?
I think we briefly touched on this last week with how ChatGPT will operate, but we can go into a little bit more detail on it here. With those prompts, the user prompts are designed for the user, like you're saying, to bring that information. If you don't have it, often it'll fill it in with like the context that it already has, like you're saying. And so if it's doing that, it could be good if you don't have like context or information, you're just kind of starting from scratch. Like, hey, this is like the hypothetical situation, create that content based on it. But you know, this is again a good spot where you can upload that user information or an interview or otherwise right there to help it answer those questions for you before you go and start asking it to build out the prompts. So you could direct it and say, like, based on this idea, answer the questions from this perspective to help it with actually filling out those answers. But I think there's a lot of ways you could approach that.
Is it fair to ask or to prompt it and say, I don't have information on the user inputs in this module. Can you help provide that by going and doing some research at this point? Or is that something you should do separately on a prompt?
I would say you could ask it, like in this case would be if you're looking for like a blueprint, for example, or you're looking for something else like a specific module.
Oh, like maybe you know, common pain points, or you know, what are people concerned about? I may not know that yet. For instance, with this client, this prospective client, I really don't know what the, you know, what the issues are with that client, the client's prospects. So I need to research that. I mean, up to this point, I've been doing it separately, like just doing random prompts, you know, to generate that kind of data.
Yeah, you could focus it in and just provide kind of the conversational instruction in this case, saying like, hey, I need you to look at this customer segment, research the top 10 pain points, you know, and I'm pretty sure I have the book built into this one I mentioned, the buyer's brief book. And so that'll trigger it to reference anything in the MarketSauce recipe front. So you could do that there, but like I would also suggest if you're wanting to strictly focus on the research to maybe like work through that in a separate tab and then copy and paste some of that information over. Like just if you know that you're going to need to research, because that'll just extend the thread of that particular ChatGPT instance, and it, you know, it might make things more difficult to go find the right information that you're looking for versus refining it in one and then moving that in
Yeah, like you
what
said
do.
last week, the longer it gets, the more risk there is for getting for it to get messy with its responses too.
Mhm. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. Any other questions or comments or otherwise? Tyrese?
Just going back to what Roger was doing, actually, a while back when I got my own MarketSauce 9000 created, I thought, well, this is really great information, but I was looking for a job. And so I was researching the companies and I thought, well, I don't know what questions to ask because I don't know what I don't know. So I turned around and I took Darby's MarketSauce, I put it into the ChatGPT and I said, what are some of the questions that are being answered here? And then sort of gave me a list of those. Then I turn around and every time now I research a company, I run my prompt for that company and I tell it to go to the website and pulls all the information and whatnot. And I'm amazed at how clear I can get on answering questions. So I had a interview yesterday morning, for example, and Tuesday morning, and it was like I was answering questions, and the woman finally just said to me, she says, "How do you know so much about my business that we don't even have on the website?" And I said, "Well, to be honest, I used AI, and I have a 26-page document right here in front of me that's telling me everything about your strengths and weaknesses." Because I also did a SWOT analysis, I did a gap analysis, I did a bunch of different things, and so she said, "Can you send that to me?" I said, "Yeah," and so we talked about that, and she said, "This is an amazing document." And without, going too much into it, I really feel that it really helps with researching whatever it is whoever it is you're trying to do business with.
Yeah, it's a great use case. And did you get the job? Or
Well, they did tell me that I'm going into the next phase of the 4-phase part. So I was like,
Yeah,
okay.
tell me you give them the document after you get to phase 4. I'm serious though, guys. Do not just go do all this work for people and then
Get
It's
to
get in a
that.
true.
position where
I made
they're
a
not
faux
going to
pas on
respect
that
the time
score.
that it's fine if you do it, but I'm just like, I would just suggest that don't undervalue the information that you guys are getting in this instance, because it's incredibly valuable, and it gives you a lot of leverage for where you can add value to an organization. So just
Mm-hmm.
don't let people take advantage of you for your willingness to show that value up front. But also on the flip side, I would say, like, don't be there's like a level of abundance here that we can bring that's just going to open up the right opportunities for you guys. So however it works out for you, Tyrese, I'm sure it's going to happen for the right
Couple of
reason.
quick things, Darby. One is like Ted, the stuff that you were posting, that's great content for creating polls on LinkedIn. And the reason that I'm finding polls effective, and it's not so much that anybody gets an enormous response, but it really helps you build your brand about what you specialize in just by posing that questions. And then you can take the poll. I mean, this is something I do all the time. You do the poll at the beginning of the week, then you do a newsletter that regards the answers of the poll. So you've gathered interest and then you've responded to them with a blog or an article. That's one thing. The other that's really stands out for me, if anybody reaches out to me for complimentary anything, I have read their entire LinkedIn profile, taken plenty of notes. I've gone through their entire website. And yeah, part of it is how'd you know so much about me, but I don't know how you go to a sales call without reading everything you can about the client. It just poisons you. And I tell you, my own visceral reaction when someone calls me and they're selling me something, I'll say, "So tell me, have you looked at my website?" "No." "Okay, we don't really have anything to talk about. Yet you're not prepared you don't know me, and I'm not going to take the time to teach you right now." So those are two strategies that really work for me in terms of connecting and reaching.
Right, Shelley. Marike, see your hand raised.
Yeah. So looking to user input now from an content perspective. I'm wondering if when we analyze our LinkedIn posts, all the content for engagement and views and the type of content, maybe even the date of publishing, the time of publishing. If we use that analysis as user input, what would happen? What will happen with the output of new content? Would that be more consistent in quality, or yeah? So when you look to a buyer persona, you collect data from as much as possible and use that as user input. But also from a content perspective, I'm sure we can use the user input of content analysis. But I'm wondering what your view is about that, or other views about that.
To clarify, when you're talking about the content analysis, are you researching content from your ideal like target audience and bringing that? Would you be copying like certain articles that people are writing, or can you share a bit more about that?
No, what I mean is based on the buyer persona and the MarketSauce, we produce content.
Mhm.
And then we publish the content, and then we see what the impact of the content is.
Mhm.
So, and I'm always looking, how can I improve the content so it becomes even better for my customer personas. So that is why I think, should I spend time on narrow analysis of my content, LinkedIn content, because I'm only on LinkedIn, would that be worth my time to improve the content for my personas?
I think absolutely worth the time in improving the content, and perhaps this is another module that we build into the workflow and analyzing content from that you've posted, you know, depending on the engagement, the response in the comments, you know, what other user engagement metrics that you'd want to be kind of like referring to identify, maybe, are there trends, are there common themes, are there certain questions that aren't being answered that could be. And I would maybe take like the 80-20 of the content that's producing the most engagement. Like Ted, you said there was one that just was 10x the results, right? And so when you see those types of results from your analysis, whether it's paid or organic, pinpoint what's the pain point or what's the topic that is everyone's actually resonating with, and like let's refine that, and like maybe we want to build a content calendar that talks specifically to this pain point.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea, because looking to the content calendar, there's a lot of all type of content possible to write. But it is, yeah, I'm already writing 3 times a week on LinkedIn for years and years. So I think that for me, it would be more profitable to make really the good connection to the personas and make some small tweaks on existing content instead of writing new content all the way.
And taking like some of your best winners and just kind of repurposing, repositioning, maybe a different angle, using the same content as the theme. I think that that's certainly makes sense to me, that we could build on that. And I know we're talking in our Slack thread about author up, so I'm curious, like, to off this call a little bit more about kind of how that process integrates in there.
Yeah.
For doing, I think, because like, again, like other platforms that plug in for maybe like blog content to see what blogs are doing best and how to optimize them from that level. Maybe that's like a similar sort of approach to how we're optimizing or making plans to optimize our existing content already on LinkedIn.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Roger.
Yeah, another question I had was, you know, a while back, you generated a brief light for me based upon the information I provided. Very limited information that you asked for. You know, it was like a few paragraphs or something. And yet, a really comprehensive brief was generated from that. Comparing that to going through the MarketSauce GPT and all those questions that require user input, I can see how that can really refine that. There's no question about that, whether I have to research that or get it from the client or whatever. How does that, in comparison, if I wanted to do something quick, it seems like the light version that you generated would be adequate in many cases. Where does the software that you're developing play in, between those two? Or is there an option for a light brief or a comprehensive brief?
Great question. The very first workable version right now that we're figuring out the login flow and getting people access to their accounts is going to be to submit orders that will use credits that will generate that light version of the brief. And so that'll be, once that's ready, it'll be very much a self-service. You submit an order through your company, your info, add a blurb, maybe attach a file. We're still figuring out how much file we can use for reference there. And then that will create that 10, 15, 20 page light version, if you want to call it light still.
Yeah, it wasn't so light, but yeah.
Versus a 70-page brief, it's a little bit lighter.
Yeah.
So that's where it's at right now in terms of like that as the milestone to getting that to where you could order 2 at a time, you could order 10 at a time, or you place additional orders for different campaigns, and those will get organized inside of your account. Where what we're trying to solve for after that, and kind of in tandem with that, is saying, okay, well, I have the brief now, I'm spending time upgrading it, I'm adding my own client information in, and now I want to create a second version that builds off of this version. So kind of upgrading or evolving an existing brief based on where you're at in any given time. And so figuring out how that workflow is going to work, so you can take blueprints, upgrade blueprints to reflect different stages of maybe some context or information, or simply, hey, here's this user discovery call that I have, make a blueprint based on that. Like that's kind of step one for where the software is going to come in to support that. Obviously, like going in and doing each one manually, like time and time, you can do different runs. You can build it out prompt by prompt, and it's more hands-on, but you can refine the results a little bit more yourself. And so once those things I just mentioned are set up to where we can start to order those blueprints, that's going to give us the foundation for setting up our own like the chat version of the interface that's going to give you the ability to talk to the avatar and continue to build out content based on that. I guess like not really a sticking point right now, because a lot of what we're doing right now is going to be built with the OpenAI API, and so we can test a lot of this stuff inside of ChatGPT the same way we're doing the Gamechanger. Is going to be related to just making sure that the content and the context that we're providing and uploading inside of your account, inside of the portal, is just going to be only referencing to like a specific project, a specific brand, and then making sure that you're able to generate that content and export it and put it into action. And to your question, Marike, about integrations and how we can plug in with there. I mean, I think that there's, just with how fast these tools move, just trying to be really cognizant of like what is maybe a nice to have feature versus like, okay, well, now you have the blog post, like just go copy paste it into the platform you want to do to publish it, and not trying to be like the one and all in one, have to be everything for everyone AI CRM management platform solution, which we could generate the content for, but getting to that point where all of those functions are strictly built out inside of the platform is going to take a lot more time and resources than getting the core functionality that we're building towards, which is getting you blueprints, getting you upload your content, get the insights, and then take those and apply them inside of ChatGPT or Claude. Because I mean, frankly, like it would break my heart for us to only work with OpenAI and then they shut down or kick us out, and then like everything is built without even intention that we could use it inside of Claude, which I still use Claude 3.5 Sonnet a lot for things in tandem. And so I think there's a lot of power to, one, being able to have those blueprints and knowing when and where you want to apply those to the other platforms that you're working in, which is partly why we're trying to get that focus nailed in for just the blueprints as they are right now. Marike?
Could I have a follow-up before Marike goes?
Yeah, sure.
When you, so to be clear, this first version of the software, you will prompt us for basic information. It will run the brief, but there won't be a refinement process in there.
We're working on the refinement process is like the second stage, like taking an existing blueprint and then building that in some way, shape, or form. So that's gonna be like part 2 once you've already got a blueprint attached and into it.
Okay.
Yeah. In the Netherlands, there is a lot to do about the data protection at this moment. So there is an European law to protect data, and in some instances, it is for us forbidden, for example, to use ChatGPT free versions, Claude, the Sonnet 3.5, the free versions, that kind of things. So I'm wondering, Darby, how in the platform is the data protected? Because when I I put data from my customers into the platform, then the platform or even OpenAI or Claude or some Microsoft or some other AIs we're working with is not allowed to use that data for their training purposes. So for me, it is really important to know secure that when I'm going to use the platform for my customers or even for ourselves, that the data is protected. It's not trained on any customer real data.
Yep. Yeah, and we won't be training the data on like the customer data, like same way that Claude and ChatGPT aren't like using that data to film and train their models. I don't have the technical speak for it right off the top of my tongue, but building storage and servers and databases that are going to keep it independent to your account so that no one else can access it. It's not being used to train the data. And then most importantly, that you're just able to interact with your content and reference it once it's in your knowledge base, but it is going to be secure.
Because at our company, we use ChatGPT for our teams because of this instance that that the data that we use from customers and ourselves is protected. It is the enterprise version, but then for small businesses. And I use Microsoft 365, the business standard with Copilot for that same purpose to protect data. So the platform, is it built on an enterprise version, or how can I see that?
If Chris was here, he would be able to speak to the enterprise level of integration with OpenAI. But yeah, like however enterprise level the enterprise integration that we're plugging in with has all of our data secure. And again, so it's going through, like whenever we're doing any of our make automations and calls, it's not being used to train any OpenAI data.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Appreciate the questions. Guys, we're at the top of the hour here. Any last words before we wrap up? And looking at probably not next week, but the week after for another follow-up based on this call, I will be sending out email invites and on the calendar invite like we have this month to make sure that you guys do get that, as well as setting it up in Circle. So you guys can tune in on that call. But anything before we wrap up? Cool. All right, y'all. Great to see you. And until next call, we will be updating you guys with anything key noted updates inside of the Circle community. And you might see some emails from me on the newsletter between now and then too. So we'll see you guys. Garrett, have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you.